Okay, fine folks. Hello, how you doing? Welcome to part 3, coil demo 3. Now I've let this piece dry out some. It's leather hard now. I put it in front of a dehumidifier, left it out. You can put a fan on it if you want. If you have the time, you can just let it sit out. Of course, you just have to be extremely careful not to let it dry too much, okay? You don't want it to go bone dry. I could still push, if I tried real hard, of course, you can break it if you do this, so you want to be careful. Like, try to really push, you can make an indentation in there. It's not too dry, okay? So, but it's going to hold its form well once I start the next part, which is textures. Okay, so remember, for this project, you have to show additive and subtractive. So I'm going to start with the additive because that's usually best, because you want to make sure that your clay, it's definitely is wet enough to do that. So to do so, I just take little bits of clay here, and I'm going to just throw some thorns on here. I just take a little bit of clay like this, and just twist it in my hand. I'm going to take a little bit more out, like so. Push it down. Now the biggest thing when you make a thorn is you just don't want to make it like this. You don't want to make it pressed in too much right there and just leave these little just finger marks. Okay, so I'm going to start this off again. So I just want to make sure I'm really working on the end of it right here. Okay, and that's fine, what I got there. It's like this little kind of Hershey's Kiss thing or whatever. See, right here, there's no like indentation there and there from me squeezing it and making it look distorted. Once I make my little thorn, I scratch or score, and then where I want to add it, you have to scratch and score here. Okay, then I could hit it with a little bit of slip, boing boing, and press it in. Okay, now this is an important part here where you just want to come in, and you don't want your work to look like you've just slapped everything on, like Mr. Potato Head or whatever. You don't want it to look like you just stuck this thing on here, so you want to smooth it and blend the place where it meets the structure, so it looks like it's growing out of there instead of someone just stuck it on. Alright, so now I have that thorn there, like so. I'll do one more for the camera, and then I'll pause you so you don't have to look at each one of these, because all you have to do is rewind. So just work the bottom bit, pull this little part here so it doesn't look like it's just squished by somebody's fingers. Make sure it's blended. Go ahead and, now your thorns, of course, score it. Your thorns, of course, could be, you know, longer, look different. Just want to be careful they don't get too thin and too long, because they will break easily and you'll be frustrated. It's usually best, I recommend just making them short and stubby like this, because they're going to be a lot stronger and it's going to be a lot harder for them to break off the piece. Okay, and then I blended it in there like that. Maybe I could always take the tips, and if I want to move the thorns, maybe I want them all to be pointing up. Go like that, so they're pointed up. Blend. This is important where it comes out of the clay body. So now I'm going to put a whole bunch of thorns on here. A lot of them, not just a few, because a few would not be enough of a texture. And I'm going to work on that a bit off camera. You just see how this works. Alright, I'll be right back. Okay, so I've just quickly attached a whole bunch of thorns to the piece. Now I'm trying to really hurry because I'm just pausing my camera and I don't want it to time out and shut back off and have to start recording again. So if I was doing this for real and just not demo purposes, I would definitely spend more time cleaning up and making sure it's a little nicer around every single one, but it's not too bad. Okay, so as you can see, I spaced them out. This is definitely additive texture. All right, look how it enhances the surface development. This is exactly what I want you to practice. That's what the motivation is for this part of the assignment, is you understanding this process of ceramics sculpture and practicing this. And make sure, you just have to make sure that you're scoring the back of the thorn or whatever you're adding on. It could be a sphere or what have you, a little disc. It doesn't have to be thorns. The back of that, and then the surface. Add a little bit of moisture, whether it's slip, or you could even just a tiny bit of water, and then on the thing, and then put it together as well into the score marks. Now I'm rushing this, so now I'm going to add some subtractive textures. I'm going to use the curved part of the spear tool, and I haven't given this any thought. I'm just going to go ahead and start doing some designs. Okay, so I'm going to take that part and just start running some lines around my piece. Now you could do anything you want with subtractive designs. You could do little tiny circles all over this piece. You could do, you know, just little ripples around the thorns if you wanted to. Just going to cut some design lines into here. And I'm just randomly making this up. Now if I had the thickness and the time, I'd want to, just like where I talked about in the pinch project, after you do the line or groove, I could cut around and round those out. Ideally that's what we would do, but for time's sake, maybe for this one it's just going to be lines. But if you're not going to round it out so much, at least to do this though when you're doing your lines, you see how sometimes when you make your line, well, very often, it's going to have a little ridge there and it's going to be a little sloppy where you cut into it. Just try to like take out those little, just the little marks in there where some clay like kind of ruffled out. Just try to clean it up. Okay, so I'm just going to come in here, do a little bit of carving, just random lines coming around. This connects over to here. Maybe this goes over to there. Maybe I'll connect. You see, this is a perfect example. I don't know if the camera can pick this up very well, but all this clay kind of came out right here. And this will be easier to clean up too when it dries a little bit more, because you can just go ahead and just take any tool like this or whatever and just go over the edges. This is why it's really important before you do any of the texture work to really smooth out all the surface work too, because it's harder to do it around the textures if you didn't do it before. And I didn't do it a lot. I did it a little bit. As you see here, the little pieces of clay coming up. Try to clean it as you go. The little ridges on my lines I have here, try to just clean them as you go. So subtractive texture, you're taking texture away. Okay? I'm going to pause the camera, do a little bit more. I've decided I'm doing the lines. I'm also, if you can tell, throwing some more design aspects in there too, where I'm just doing little circles as well. Just keep in mind, it's fairly important if you do the subtractive textures to let the surface dry some. You wouldn't want to try this when the clay is super wet. That is why, and one of the reasons why you want to do the additive textures first, because if you're spending a little time on that, that'll give your surface a little bit of time to dry as you're working on your additive. And if the clay still isn't dry after the additive, you know, to the point where it's easy to carve into it and you're not going to make a mess, because if your clay is too wet, you can already see this is making a bit of a mess. Like all these little divots coming off. This has to be cleaned up a lot. If it was wet, it would just be tearing it apart, and you would just have this huge mess on your hands if it was too wet. So yeah, you have to let it dry a little bit. If you're in a hurry, again, hair dryer or a fan in front of it for a little while. Just keep a close eye because you don't want it to be too dry. So I'm coming in here, and you definitely, after you get done doing this, or you can do it as you go, but just go ahead and clean up the lines really well. This is going to be important. I can't understate this, is that after it totally dries and after it's fired, this stuff pops out like crazy. You notice it 10 times more when it's fully dry. Do little circles as well, little additive thing. So just make sure that you're trying to clean this. I'm not gonna, for this demonstration, go ahead and polish it all up in front of you. No way would you would be able to stand watching that the whole time. But I think you can get the idea without me showing you too. You just have to come in here and polish all this up. Sometimes it might require it to dry even a little bit more, because it is a little easier to do that once it's even drier. Like all these little divots, all that. But additive textures, thorns, subtractive, taking clay away, as you see. I just made this up off the top of my head, these lines I'm cutting into here. I don't like the way that one ends like that. We can go somewhere. I could go into here and just continue if I wanted to. Just tons of detailed lines in here. I could, if these thorns were dry enough, I could have the lines going up and doing subtractive into my additive as well. Okay, so you just go ahead and just start designing. But remember, you have to clean this up really well. Get into all, round it out a little bit, pull that stuff out of there. But that's going to be the part, because craftsmanship is always 1/3 of your grade. And it's the hardest thing for people to understand when they first start ceramics. What it really means to clean it up, refine it. And it's taking it home basically to the last part. I mean, nothing, all the hard work that you do is going to be for nothing in the end if you don't clean it up, because then it's just going to look not good. Alright, so you clean it up a lot, which I'm not going to go into a lot right here. And then the one last thing is, check out this project. Is there trapped air anywhere here? Is there? Let's think about this. This whole project is hollow. That's why we practice doing coil building. We made something that's okay to be fired, and we built up a structure. Where's there trapped air? This is hollow, this is hollow. It's coming up, though. That's coming up into here, opens up, so that's fine. But remember, we put a second floor in right here, a second base right there, right? There's trapped air on the bottom. So, there's lots of things you could do. You could come in here, this is the most common thing. Throw a large hole into the bottom. This will allow the air to come out when it's fired, and it won't blow up. Okay, make a nice hole. Remember, never set your project back down on top of little clay shavings. Also, scratch your name deep into the bottom and put your period number somewhere there too, so I can identify your project easily. Scratch your name deep, put your period number. I usually do this as well, just for safety reasons. It's better to be safe than not. Is then inside the textures, maybe I come in like this, alright, and I poke a hole a couple of places from the outside too, just to be safe. Poke a couple holes from the outside. You got to make sure those don't close back up with anything that's on there. Okay. So that's it. The total process. The only thing I'm not really going to cover in this demonstration is, again, coming in and cleaning all this up. You gotta do it. It's so important. All these little places where the edges kind of frayed up, you gotta come in and clean it. This takes time. Or with my lines just are not really the way I want them. Get all the little pieces that fell onto my wet clay here, the thorns. Clean it up. Come around, clean everything up. All these lines. Look at this. This is kind of nasty in here, right? You have to just think of how it'll look when it's 10 times more apparent after it dries and is fired. It's kind of smushed in here. Come in, bring those lines back out again if it gets smushed in a little bit. This edges right here, you see, come in, make them nice. Just go all around your project, polishing everything, get the tool marks out, get all these little frayed edges. You gotta get the frayed edges from your carving lines out. Gotta get the frayed edges out. I'm not gonna bore you all by doing this forever on the video. I'm gonna shut it off now. Just good luck. Let me know if you have any problems. And of course, if you have problems, that's great. Not great, but you learn from your mistakes. I mean, that's the simple truth of the thing. You learn from mistakes. Even if the whole thing collapses on you, you learn from your mistakes. So, again, though, be careful. Don't let any part of this dry out too much. Usually the bottom dries out too much because when people are wrapping it up like this, put the bag down on it. When you have your textures, you better be careful doing this that you don't destroy your textures. Open your bag up so you're not damaging them. And don't let it tuck in tight onto the whole surface, just along the bottom. So don't forget, when you're tucking this in here, weigh it down so it doesn't come back out again. Keep your project at all times leather hard. Do not let your project dry too much at any time. Never before you bring it back to school. Okay? So, good luck. Contact me. Let me know if you have any questions.